Ta-dun, ta-dun.
Welcome back to the High Heels Happy Hour. Finally, welcome
Yes.
back.
Welcome,
Well,
welcome.
for us, it's finally.
Yes.
We've had just a week's break in the broadcasting schedule because we had Hurricane Milton come through.
He was a little angry
with his tornado friends. And first shout out to everyone in Vero and hoping and praying that everyone's home was fine, but unfortunately big parts of our little town was devastated by tornadoes. We know how to prepare for hurricane, but you can't prepare for tornado.
No.
And we have no basements in Florida, so there's nowhere to go.
And we have a bunch of windows in the house.
We have a bunch of windows. Yeah.
It's like, go get cover.
Yeah. It was terrible. But luckily, our houses were fine.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yes. And and we've been traveling. So check in. How you doing?
Good. Besides the hurricane, I was actually traveling back just before the hurricane.
You were racing Milton.
Yes. I was like, man, if I would have known, I probably would have. If I had not traveled solo, I would have just extended my vacation.
Yeah.
But I had to get home to the family, so I went by myself to visit my dad. And for those of you that probably listen to the podcast, if not, go listen. I haven't had an opportunity to go visit my dad by myself.
Who lives in Puerto Rico.
Lives in Puerto Rico by myself. So this was a really nice trip. And we just shared a bunch of laughs, Tito's, and beer. And food. And good food.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fun.
Nice.
How about you?
Well, I was in Sweden for almost 6 weeks by myself, taking care of my mom, who unfortunately has some severe health issues. And it was good. It was hard to see her that way, but it was good. I'm so glad I got to spend the time with her and take care of her. So I did a lot of cooking and we did a lot of just hanging out because it was very much day to day what her kind of status was like. So I had to just take it one day at a time.
Which is out of your norm.
Which is out of my norm. So
I'm so proud of you.
Good for me not to plan. But it was important. Family's important. So really is. So it was great to be able to do that and have a husband that can just take care of everything at the house.
Yes.
For 6 weeks. So thank you, honey.
I didn't ask questions on my household. I'm like, did they eat?
Yeah.
I didn't ask what they ate.
I had put a lot of food in the freezer, but no, they ate. They were just fine. It was clean and nice when I got home.
Yes, same
here.
He had
been busy.
I actually got some picture frames hung up, and Chance's room was done.
Chance the dog.
Yes, the dog.
And by the way, if you have listened before but not pressed the follow or subscribe button, please do. Share with a friend. And if you are brand new, welcome. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button as well.
Also, if you're wondering if I'm naked, maybe.
She is.
You all can watch on YouTube.
Yes.
Yes. So I got distracted. So what's your hack?
My hack for the week. And this is something you may or may not have heard before, but when you go shopping in the grocery store, I want you to make a conscientious effort to shop the perimeter as much as you possibly can. Or why don't you even just check in with yourself and see how many items you buy in the actual aisles and how many do you buy in the perimeter. Do you know why you want to shop the perimeters?
Guessing coming from you, probably it's a lot healthier to
That's where you have the fresh whole foods.
Okay.
The aisles is where the processed stuff is, except for, of course, the frozen aisles. Well, there's a lot of processed, but frozen fruit and vegetables. So I shop 99% in the perimeters. Perimeter, you have your produce, you have your bakery. Not the, well, some grocery stores have the prepackaged bread too in the perimeter, or the perimeter, but usually it's the dairy, the fish, the meat, the produce in the perimeter. And down the aisles, you have all the packaged crap. I do go down the aisle with canned vegetables, spices, herbs, and oils. That one I visit a lot. And then dog food is also. Otherwise, there's not much that I buy down the aisles. I mean, every now and then, but it's not. So check with yourself, see how many items you pick up in the perimeter, or if you can buy most of what you're buying in the perimeter, and try to avoid the center of the store. That's where they get us with the cereals and the prepackaged cake mixes and the other stuff, the flours and the,
I've been trying to be better, but I also try not to go shopping.
Which I do. I go shopping every day. And in Sweden, I did almost twice a day. It was great.
See,
I love grocery stores. Yeah. So what is your hack?
So my hack is going to piggyback on your spices. And while in Puerto Rico, the food was so tasty. Like, just tastes so good. So I saw my dad's wife make this puree or mix in the blender, and it was, we call it sofrito, which we've seen, and you can buy it at the store.
Yeah, in one of the middle aisles.
Yes. And freshly made, she makes whatever she's going to make that day, and then puts the rest in the freezer in little ice cubes. Oh my goodness.
So it's almost like a stock or a bouillon, like a flavor enhance or flavor starter.
Yes. Yeah. But it's really good, like culantro, cilantro, pepper. I think it's green pepper and red pepper, and then onion, garlic, and a couple of spices. I think the only thing it doesn't have is salt.
Okay.
Because you can add that to taste. Okay. But you put it on basically anything, rice, and you let it simmer first with a little bit of oil, and then you add things as you go, so it kind of activates all the flavors.
Wow.
And it
I want that
good,
recipe.
Tastes good.
I want to. So are we going to put that recipe in our Facebook group? Okay, great. We're going to make sofrito. Yep.
See, she has a little Puerto Rican in it. I mean, in her.
See? But today we're not going to go to Puerto Rico. Today we're going to go to Europe.
Yes.
And today we're going to talk about what we can learn from the Europeans. And yes, I know that I am European, but I've lived in the US for a long time. So I feel like I'm almost in between. I'm almost like Greenland. I'm like, yeah. No, it's
you love teaching, so this is.
I do love teaching,
perfect.
And it really, this time, since I was there a long time and I wasn't distracted by kids doing a lot of things, I really had time to pay attention and think about things that I used to take for granted. Especially since I did so much cooking. I usually don't do that much cooking when I'm in Sweden because we travel around. But now I did so much cooking, and I really paid attention to, first of all, food, which we'll get into, but also lifestyle in a way that I have not done before. And I paid attention to people in a way that I haven't done in a long time.
That must have been fun.
Yes. So a lot of this, we're going to talk about Europe. And of course, Europe is a lot of countries combined. And if you told us that Norway and Sweden are the same thing, I would have to punch in the face. Swedes and Norwegians have a love-hate, mostly hate each other. But no, of course, there are discrepancies, or no, differences, not discrepancies, differences between the countries, just like you have differences between the states and the US. But it's a one country, one history, one language. Whereas in Europe, it's not. But because the countries are smaller, and the regions is almost as, the size of the US, a little bigger if you count all of Russia and stuff. But so you still have the interaction, between countries, almost like interactions between states in the US. So we're going to talk about some things are more specific to certain regions, but I'm going to I'm going to paint with a big European brush. And of course, being Swedish, I know the Nordic countries or Scandinavia the best, which is also the best part of Europe. Just saying. I will say though, very interesting. What lately coming up on my YouTube feed, all the health shows I listen to, is the fact that they're now saying, we talked about the blue zones. There's a documentary on Netflix about you never heard about the blue zones?
No.
The longest living people in the world are in different zones around the world.
But not in the United States.
There is one place in the United States. It's
Utah?
no, it's in California. It's Luma Lima, something. But it's in Japan. It's in Sardinia. No, is it Sardinia or somewhere in Italy, south of Italy, places around the world where people just live way longer than I think Costa Rica is another.
I can see that.
And they try to find the similarities between them. Well, now it's been discovered that 3 of the countries that have the longest lifespan in the world and also longest health span are 3 of the Scandinavian countries. Or the Nordic region, I should say, because Finland is not a Scandinavian country. It's Sweden, Finland, and Denmark.
What?
So 3 out of the 7 countries with the longest lifespan are in the Nordic region. So it's been a lot of talk about lately about monitoring what Scandinavians do and eat, to what we can adapt from there. So just pay attention. You heard it here. So yes, that's all we're going to talk about in the next couple of months. Just kidding. No, just kidding. Just kidding. But I think it's very interesting that there is, because it's a pretty harsh climate, it's cold. It's not like we have we talk a lot about eat the rainbow stuff. Well, there's berries growing and apples, but it's not like we have papayas and kiwis and oranges.
And passion fruit.
Did you not? No, there's no passion fruit growing in Sweden. Anyway, so talking about Europe as a whole, what can we learn, us Americans learn from the Europeans? And the first area I'm going to talk about is food. So the first thing, let's just hit that straight on. Pretty obvious, but first thing when it comes to food is, can you guess without looking at your paper?
Yes, probably ingredients.
Well, we'll get to that. First thing is portion size. If the plates themselves are just smaller, but portion size in the US as opposed to Europe is so very different. And I'm going to be honest, there were times we went to a restaurant where I was not full because I just did an entree and that was not enough food for me because I'm used to American portions, or I'm just used to eating salads or things that fill me up. But of course, in Europe, it's much more custom that you do an appetizer and an entree and maybe a dessert, but each portion is smaller.
Yeah, here they're huge. You get appetizers,
especially if I say the more casual the dining, the bigger the portions. So the more unhealthy the dining. So if you go to a IHOP or a Denny's or something like that, and you order something and they say, what are your sides? And you get like 4 sides. That's a complete different meat. I mean, like, it's so much food. So yeah, portion size is the first thing that we should learn a little more from the Europeans. And it could be that, you divide it up into a salad, and often for Italy, for instance, you just don't have one what do you call it?
Course.
Course.
Of course. Okay.
You have a little bit of salad, then you have a little bit of pasta, then you have your meats, so there's a lot of smaller courses that come in, but each one is not humongous. So in US we're more used to like stuffing our face all at once. Their eating takes a lot longer because you're eating smaller portions, waiting, and then the next course come in. We'll get to eating patterns later, but portion size is definitely an issue in the US to why the obesity is so high here.
Even when you order food at a fast food, you want to upsize for 25 cents.
Exactly.
And it's an extra 1,000 calories for 25 cents.
There you go.
My Lord.
Yeah, and it's not it's one thing if it was the salads that were that large, but that's never. It's always the refined, crappy carbohydrates. That's the
25 cents for extra fries or $10 for an extra tomato.
So in the US, we eat so much more of the refined carbs and the sugars. Whereas if you eat smaller portion size, like France, for instance, that has the smallest portion sizes, some of the smallest in the world. But we've always been like what they call it, the French phenomenon, or the French paradox. The fact that they eat so much fat, the cheeses and the butter sauces and they eat much smaller portions. So you don't have to have restrictions. You can eat whatever you want. You can eat a croissant. You don't need to eat 14. And the size of a croissant is so much smaller than here in the US.
Like bite size.
Yeah. So if you're eating smaller, then you have to restrict yourself. You can eat the baguettes and all of the things. All right, then we're number 2 when it comes to food is the ingredients. You're absolutely right. So interesting fact is the exact same food have completely different ingredients in the EU, European Union, and the US. So for instance, McDonald's fries, which is a big corporation that comes all over the world, but depending on the regulations of the area or the country you're in, you got to follow the rules of the country. So, for instance, McDonald's French fries. In Europe, there are 4 ingredients. In the US, there are 8. Same French fry, same company, but in the US, there's way less restrictions to what you can put in food. EU has some of the most strict regulations in the world of what you are allowed to put into food. So if you look at the ingredients labels of any product in the EU, and it comes down to skincare and makeup and all of those body care, all of those things as well, they have very, very strict rules when it comes to chemicals, preservatives, all of those things. So food is same food, like Heinz ketchup is another example. Completely different ingredients. I mean, there's going to be tomato in there somewhere. But when it comes to levels of sugar, levels of preservatives, that's why I was always amazed when I came to the US that things lasted so long. Like the expiration dates were so much, like you could buy bread, not fresh, obviously, but Wonder Bread or whatever, and it would last for a month.
Wonder Bread, I wonder what it's made out of because it lasts for years.
Because in Europe and in Sweden, it would go bad like after a few days. So I was like, wow, what is going on here? Well, it's not natural. Let's put it that way. So that being said, with the higher regulations of ingredients in food, you have much better quality of the food that goes into with higher standard of food in the EU. So that makes a huge difference when it comes down to what we put in our bodies. Then in Europe, you also eat more seasonal and more local. So the whole local thing, we're trying to go farmers market, yes, but in the US, we import from all over the world, which is great. When you want to have fresh avocados or whatever it is all year round. But in Europe, it's much more of a seasonal. You eat seasonally. And even if you can get mangoes year round, they're not going to be any good. So you're not going to buy it. So it's much more kind of stepping back in time and doing what we're supposed to, and also what our bodies we did for millions of years, is eating seasonally and eating locally. That's what we could get. So that means too that the food is fresher. It's not hasn't been shipped across the world. So it is fresher food sitting on your shelves less time. Then same thing goes for grain harvesting. So the way farming and grain harvesting in Europe, again, much stronger regulations of what you can do, but the turnover and the sustainability it's much greater. So you can't use the same crops forever. You got to sort of switch it up, because otherwise you drain the soil of all its nutrients, which is happening in the US because it's more based on volume. So for instance, wheat in the US is very different from wheat in Europe. So wheat, which is one of the main ingredients in bread, has way more, what is the name of that thing again? It's called gliadin, which is gluten. So it's much higher in the US. That's why even if you're gluten sensitive, you can eat breads and pastas in Europe. Not everyone. If you have celiac, you can, obviously. But a lot of people say, I don't react to gluten or to carbs the same way. Well, it's because the wheat is different. Or the grains in general are different because they're much more nutrient dense and less chemicals, and also much less preservatives. You can't what do you call it? Glyphosates, pesticides. Yes. Same thing there. The rules for what you can do to your crops, spraying and all that, is way tougher. Yep. So yes, I ate a lot of bread, a lot of baked goods, which I love, which I don't eat in the US because I don't like it as much. So fresh bread in Europe, there's a demand for fresh bread. So you have bakeries and stuff that is baked right off the shelf. Whereas here, again, you can buy stuff that is, even though I'm sure you can go to, your grocery store, have their own bakery session, which is a better alternative because it will have less preservatives. But still, it's the main ingredient. The wheat is different.
Well, it's interesting. I know you're talking about Europeans, but even in Puerto Rico, I'm not a bread eater.
Yeah.
And I had bread every day and did not feel sluggish, bloated, nothing. It was fresh bread and it just tastes different. And I do know they're not allowed to import anything. So
there you go. So it's self-sustainable. So that's definitely
even though
local.
It's a part of the United States.
Because it's an island, so you don't want to keep stuff from the
fruit.
Island.
Like I would, the passion fruit.
Yeah,
I just picked it off the tree, cut it, and put a shot in it.
Yeah, that's nice. And in Europe too, you eat a lot more sourdough, and because of sourdough, it's a whole starter process, and it's because it's a sort of a fermentation process, so it eliminates a lot of the effects that gluten and other things can have on your body. So it's a much, much better bread to eat than regular wheat bread. Them. Do you have a sourdough starter?
Marcelo just had me buy one.
Okay. Great. All right. Another thing when it comes to food in Europe is food marketing. So again, much stricter rules for what you're allowed. So food is almost considered like a medication. You have all these, and you have at the end, you have all those. So you cannot advertise food, especially food that contains a lot of sugar, at certain times on TV when kids are watching.
What?
Yep. Because you don't want to, it's like selling crack to
That's what they do here.
Yes, that's how they get them, because the kids go, I want that. I saw it. It has a court. And I think also in some regions, I don't know about all of Europe, you are not allowed to put like cartoons on, sugary, because that will appeal to the children. And it's not good for you. Just saying. So yeah, food advertising overall is not a lot. Also, the way it's displayed in store, they still have the displays in store and things, but it definitely comes with, if it's not good for you and high sugar content, that will be pointed out.
Huh. Oh my,
Yep.
my.
All right, now to one of our favorite food items, not food but drink items,
Right.
Coffee consumption. Cheers.
Cheers.
So that's something I really noticed. We drink a whole lot of coffee. And I think all of Europe, Nordic countries are known for their coffee consumption, but so are the southern, Italian coffee and French. And there's a lot of coffee, but there's a difference between coffee there and coffee here. So I know growing up and when I lived in Sweden, we drank coffee all day, even after dinner at night. And it did not affect our sleep the same way. Has to do something with the coffee, but also I think it's what your body gets used to. Now I wouldn't recommend drinking coffee late in the day for people that can't sleep. But there's something in the way. So in Europe, it's more common with a lighter roast. The more you roast the coffee, the more you kill its antioxidants.
That makes sense. So it's dark roast doesn't have as much
antioxidants
and less caffeine.
Yes.
The light roast have? Yeah.
So coffee is also been shown to be great for cognition performance and physical performance. That's why, you can use coffee as your pre-workout.
See?
You don't need to buy it. You just go get some coffee. It really, it boosts fat loss, coffee, because the caffeine increases fatty oxidation in the body, which then increases, that's fat loss. So I think why Europeans might stay slightly skinnier is because they drink coffee all day.
See?
So you can't have a constant high fatty oxidation. Now, coffee also has, as I said, antioxidants, has polyphenols, which are great for your microbiome, which also you will find in berries and fruits, anything that's colorful. Dark chocolate has polyphenols too, but it's great for you.
It's a great color.
Flavonoids. Yeah. So coffee is really like a super food. And one thing that the U.S. does too, if you think about a Starbucks coffee, well, it's added flavors, sugars, creams, so the coffee drink becomes an ice cream sundae or milkshake. You have coffee drinks that are 500 calories as opposed to drinking just a cup of coffee that's 0 calories. So yes, if you go to Starbucks every day and have 3 of those drinks, that's 1,500 calories.
Oh my gosh.
You're drinking all your calories. So yeah, that's definitely something to be
oh my Lord,
thinking about. And then apart from that too is the social aspect of drinking coffee that we don't have as much in the US. So Starbucks never made it in Sweden because we've had coffee houses since the dawn of time, because we have the social exercise of fika, which I've talked about before, which means sitting down, having coffee, and most of the time a sweet. Not a huge sweet, a small sweet. We don't drink our sweets, we eat our sweets. So fika we do every day, and it can be several times a day. But it's the aspect of sitting down, having your coffee, not on the go and running around. So that whole social aspect is huge when it comes to health. drinking your coffee, sitting down, like we're doing here, sharing our time. That's a very European thing to do. We'll go to your local coffee house. So Starbucks didn't make it because the interiors were too stark. Our coffee houses are made to sit down, enjoy, almost like a living room. And Starbucks was not up to par.
Huh.
There you have it.
Interesting.
Yes. All right, we're going to leave food. Other things we can learn from the Europeans. Environmental sustainability. Can I just say, it's on a whole different level. So, first of all, the Nordic Scandinavian countries, which are Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, are the world leaders in renewable energy and sustainable living overall. So there's a big focus on green energy. There are more solar panels in Stockholm and Sweden than there are in Florida. And we don't have that much sunshine. So that just shows you. Yes, there are more electric cars.
I'm like, wait.
We have a lot of wind power, which is because we have some open spaces. So wind power and hydropower. And most of the public transportation is electric. But let me just tell you, from a day-to-day aspect of living in a Scandinavian house, the level of recycling. So we might think we do good when we throw our paper and all into one big bin, which is, yes, better than nothing, right? A Scandinavian, or yes, this is the same in all of Scandinavia, but let's say a Swedish household, you recycle everything down to the smallest little piece. So it's not like, oh, should I throw this window envelope in the paper recycle? No, because the window is plastic. So you have to, and for those of you that are listening to this, I am now showing, you have to tear out the plastic part of the envelope. You also have to tear off the part where the glue is and throw those separately. And then the rest of the envelope can go in the paper recycling.
That is insane.
So anything. So if you have a carton of milk, you know, this little plastic top, you have to cut that out, throw that in plastic, and the rest goes in paper. For glass, you separate. So each HOA or each region where you live, the garbage collector is not one. They come and pick up different dumpsters, different things. The stuff that you don't have disposals the same way, sink disposals in Scandinavia or most of Europe at all, because it's not environmentally the same as friendly. You have a little paper bag that sits under your sink where you collect all the food scraps. And then you throw that away in its separate bin that will then turn into soil, of course. Well, so everything, it's a whole science to some items you go, where do I throw this? and now it's come down to there's going to be printed on the package what bin it should go in. It says this to be recycled as paper or to be split up into paper and metal or whatever it is.
Oh my Lord.
Yes. It is. So anytime now I've really started thinking about it coming back to the US where we're just throwing it. So another thing that we don't throw in the regular recycling here is plastic bags because they destroy our the machines, the recycling, because they get tangled up. So one thing you can do is just separate all the plastic bags, and each grocery store will have a recycling center in front where you can throw away plastic. So that's what you can also do cartons and egg cartons and stuff separate foam recycling bins in the US. So take it a step further. What can you do to really separate? Because honestly, who is working in the recycling centers separating all of it? Because the plastic and the paper can't go in the same. I'd like to know. I'd like to see a Netflix documentary on that.
Oh my.
So yes.
Of what they don't do?
Yes. There are no plastic bags. Buying groceries, you bring, or buying anything, buying clothes. You got to bring your own bag. Otherwise, you got to pay for a paper bag. Plastic is almost eradicated. There are no plastic straws, no plastic forks and knives. None of it. Plastic is just, if you gotta use it, you recycle it.
So if you use a wooden, where do they go? Are they recycled or are they thrown out?
The wood one goes into regular trash because that's burnable. Yes, and that can turn into energy as well. Because the burning process produces energy. And Sweden is one of the leaders in creating energy out of trash.
Huh.
So another thing is a lot of the Scandinavian chains, so we can't see this, but it's some jewelry I bought from H&M. It's sustainability in when you produce items, how much recycled material can you use? And a lot of stores now want to put in exactly how much of this product is recycled. So this one says 50% recycled. So it was some little necklace or something I bought at H&M. Tells me 50% of it was recycled material. I might think, well, that's not good enough. So then I might not buy that. And I might buy this instead because this one was 80% recycled. Pretty cool, huh? So when it comes down to clothes, all of it, they now like to show you and point out how much of this is reduced or is recycled. Yeah.
Huh.
So I think the US have some stuff to learn right there. All right. Moving on. Let's go into public transportation. I said that most of it is electrical, so all the buses in Sweden, but it's also a different view on public transportation. So especially the Nordic countries again are really efficient when it comes to, and they kind of count on wherever you live, you should be able to get anywhere. So public transportation is highly efficient. On top of that, they have the integration of bike lanes. So everyone in Sweden bikes. It's almost become the Netherlands, which is known for the biking. Most people bike year round.
Whoa.
A lot of electrical bikes too, so you get a little help on the hills.
Yeah.
But yes, so most people bike, and they have those special wheels that you put on for winter biking. But it really is, a lot of the laws put in are to encourage biking, cycling, and that way reduce cars. And there's also a great increase in tolls, car tolls to get into cities.
But so if you bike, you can save it.
Yeah, it costs you nothing. Huh. All right, let's move on to lifestyle. What we can learn from the Europeans. Number one, not just the food, but the eating pattern, which I touched on a little bit. So Europe is a way bigger emphasis on sitting down to eat, especially the southern countries too. If you look at Spain, Italy, you sit down and eat for hours. It is not a quick throw in whatever. It's a sit down, hang out, and food is a social aspect. So it's you enjoy your food, you share your food, and you let it take its time. So the whole fast, let me stuff my face. The faster you eat, if you eat really fast like that, especially if you eat a lot of refined carbs and highly processed foods, you won't get the satiety cues. You don't know that you're full. You just keep stuffing. But if you're sitting down, eating, enjoying the food, eating whole foods, you're going to feel full quicker. So there's no I mean, of course, there are fast food chains.
Yeah.
But most of the time, lunch, especially if you work in a city, I remember lunch was like the big meal of the day. So it's not a quick sandwich. Norway is different there than Sweden, but in Sweden and a lot of the southern European countries, lunch is like the biggest meal. There's a big emphasis on that meal. And then you might not eat as big a dinner and you don't eat as big a breakfast. But lunch is like, and it really, with your circadian rhythm, that is the best time to eat a lot and not right before you're supposed to go to bed. But another thing is it's a defined break in between the meals. So you have breakfast and then you have your big lunch and then you have dinner. And you might have a coffee and a little sweet somewhere there in the mid-afternoon. But it's not the constant snacking because you have your defined eating pattern, which I think, and in, southern European countries, you have a big lunch and then you have siesta. And you go take a little nap. And then you go back to work. Yeah, in France and Italy, everything closes in the afternoon.
That's insane.
And then you work till 8, but you slept for an hour or two. And then you have dinner in Spain. You have dinner at 10, but then you're up till midnight. Yes. So, and then another thing we talked about too, the social aspect of eating. It's not a standing at the desk or you sit down. Not just the food, but the fact that you're sharing it. And that's something that, too, from the blue zones around the world, they've shown that having a social network, hanging out with people and friends is such a indicator of longevity. Because being lonely will kill you faster. And it's really the mental health aspect of that is really important.
Yeah, I bet.
Another thing, socially, lifestyle-wise, you walk everywhere. Walking, and even though you might not live in a city, so I'm from Stockholm, which is a big city. I walk everywhere. I was easily over 20,000 steps a day.
Oh, wow.
I mean, some days I was 30,000 because we just walked. That's just what you do. But even if you live in more rural areas to where you don't walk to maybe work, you gotta walking out in nature and being outside, walking, biking, cross country skiing, the whole movement outside, outdoors is huge.
Yeah.
And we have a saying, there's no bad weather, only bad clothing. So even though it's winter, harsh climate, you just dress for it and you spend time outside. Berry picking, mushroom picking, hiking, skiing, all of that are things that you do because you move around. You just don't sit still. So yeah, that is very different from the very car-centric world we have here.
Definitely.
And then something that I'm not sure about the southern regions, but northern Italy has not Italy, sorry, Northern Europe has definitely a much higher emphasis on work-life balance. You have your very long maternity leave, which is a paid year.
Oh, wow.
You have paternity leave. The dad in Sweden has to take time off. But he can do it whenever he wants within the first 3 years.
Oh,
so it could be the mother has a year, and then the dad will have like when the kid is 2 years. Because he's not breastfeeding.
Yeah.
But it is the emphasis on time off work and time with family is huge. You also have 5-week paid vacation every year.
Holy moly!
If you're employed. And, if you have 5 weeks, then you will unwind. So I think that, and you might not make as much money.
But you won't be so stressed.
But you're not, exactly.
That's
have
priceless.
More of the balance. Health-wise, definitely, but also relationship-wise. And my last point, of course, I had to touch on this because I am an interior designer after all, but the design and innovation of Europe. So I'm sure you've heard about Italian design, very kind of modern and very sleek. And then you have Scandinavian design, which is very much focused on form and functionality. And it goes with the sustainability of all of that. And it really stems from the fact that it was a poor part of the world that we didn't have. We could only use the materials that were there, and it was a lot of pine and a lot of, wood overall. But the focus on minimalism and functionalism. So not a lot of fluff, but it is streamlined, and you really don't buy a bunch of stuff that you don't need.
Is that why IKEA?
Yes, of course. So
Okay.
IKEA is all stems from minimalism, functionalism, and compact living.
Yeah.
So IKEA is really not made for huge American homes. Because everything is kind of small. I'm sure they've adapted in some areas, but most of it is made for smaller, efficient homes.
Makes sense.
Because that is more of kind of the Scandinavian view on. Not a lot of clutter. It's very kind of clean and open, because you don't buy a bunch of stuff you don't need.
I like it.
So, do you have any questions?
No. Well, the only question I have is, why don't we do it here?
Well, they will start now after this podcast. No, but it really is. It really made me think. And looking overall, I've always said, well, people in Europe aren't that skinny either. We say, oh, Americans are so obese. But now when I really look, we have such a problem with obesity in this country, with our children, with it. And it's not just because it's, oh, we're fat. It's a health crisis.
Yeah.
We got to depend on medications. It's all stems from the food we eat and the way we live. And it's not just an eating issue. It's what we're eating. And
all I can think about is a circle of chaos. You have bad food, bad ingredients, which then you have bad health.
Yeah.
Which gets you into,
and you don't move.
Medication.
And you gotta rely on your car, and you don't have a lot of time, so you gotta rely on things that are fast.
Yeah, I mean, we have. It's almost like we have a triple X against us.
Yeah,
the ingredients, the lack of time, and the lack of even healthcare is hard to get.
So that's an area where there are some areas I did not go into.
Yeah.
Because they become slightly political, and I don't go there.
Yeah,
but other things Europe are very different is healthcare, education system, social welfare, and integration of immigrants. But we're not going to go there, because then it becomes political. But yeah, those are big aspects too.
It's just being aware of that stuff.
Yeah,
is important, because I mean, even if we didn't do that, just the simple fact that our ingredient list is tripled.
Just that. Yep. So I remember when I started coming to the US, when I was in my 20s, when I started dating Michael, I was just going to the grocery store was like Disneyland, because it was so huge, and the cereal aisle was like, oh my God. But I remember thinking, everything is fat-free, sugar-free, this, that, that. I'm like, wow, how can Americans be fat? They have all this fat-free stuff. Well, of course, I didn't realize that they're all, loaded with chemicals and other crap that makes us eat more. But I just thought it was like, oh, in Sweden, you can only get like the real potato. Here, you can get it in a box.
Yeah,
and you can whip it up at home. I'm like, wow, that's such a time saver. Well, it's also killing us. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Not saving time in lifespan. Let's put it that way. We're
you're
eating ourselves
time now, and you're also cutting your life short.
Exactly. Same thing with fast food. We might think it's fast right now, but it is
fastly
shortening our life. Yeah.
Oh Lord.
So yeah.
That was pretty eye-opening. I know we've talked a little bit about it, and even I don't visit my dad, like I said, often, but even going there, with the amount of food, I'm not a big foodie, but having home cooked meals by my dad, I was like, I will eat whatever you make, and I wasn't even like full, or my stomach didn't hurt. And even coffee, the coffee beans are grown there, and they, you know,
we
they
don't
do
have that
the
in Sweden.
turnover.
There's not a lot of local coffee.
Oh man, it tastes even the whipped cream. I will tell you this: even the whipped cream was homemade, and I took a sip. And
What do you mean homemade from your own cow?
Yes,
they have a cow.
They have cows.
Oh, your dad has cows?
Yeah.
Oh,
so they were home. It's homemade whipped cream.
It's like raw milk.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It was like thick and cream. I was like, what is this? And my brother's like, that's fresh.
That's real stuff, not with the
I was like,
added or the non-dairy creamer.
Yeah, but I didn't know.
Just hydrogenated oils. And
so I was like, it's like really creamy. And he's like, yeah, that's real. And then I was like, oh, yeah. So my whole mouth was full of just
it's a difference. I felt difference in eggs. I felt different in all the dairy products are very different.
Chicken outside, you get an egg. And you
I mean, even though in Sweden you don't live in a big city, you don't get. It's not that you don't. It's not my farm outside, but it's just what you buy regularly that's not organic is still so good. And then of course it was really hard to find. Oh, but I want some lemongrass or whatever, some specific ingredients. They're like, well, it's not seasoned for that. And you're like, what? And you think, oh, it's not. So I shouldn't eat that now.
No, this was very eye-opening. And
but I will say too, there is obesity is definitely going up in Europe as well, because we're eating more like Americans. But it's still there's a big difference. Big difference.
I can see that.
All right.
I loved it. Good.
So,
cheers.
Cheers to us and the Europeans, especially the Nordic countries. Did you all pay attention to that? It's a lot of the Nordics. Yeah. We all knew it. We're slowly taking over. We might be small, but we're mighty.
Oh my.
All right. Well, until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers. School.